machine. So we decided to do radio voices.
Yeah, let's do radio voices.
No, so we're doing our intro right after the show tonight. We usually wait until next week to record the intro, but
Fuck it,
we're going to do it now.
Yeah.
My wife and some friends in there, or your friends, my friends, our friends, are watching Biodome.
classic film from 1996.
How familiar are you with Biodome?
Sadly, very familiar. There was I think that movie came out. Shit. Then I guess it wasn't that year. I distinctly remember there was a person we went to high school with named Billy Allen.
Okay.
And he and I had a kinship with the Biodome in Spanish class in 9th grade.
So this was like after it came out, and then VHS.
Well, 9th grade would have been 96.
So did you both see it in the theater?
No, we both. I think it was probably when it came out on VHS, pre-DVD.
Yeah.
And he was quoting it in class, and I was like, I know that movie. And we both just fucking... I don't know why. It's a terrible fucking movie. But for a good year, I thought it was the best. And then later on in life, when me and Matt Hall and Jake Barrow were living together and hanging out all the time, we watched Biodome religiously in an ironic sense. You know, we would smoke some God's green herb and watch Biodome.
I don't really have much of a connect with that movie. I've seen it maybe 3 times. Mm-hmm. Very low on the scale.
That's pretty low on the spectrum.
But I do appreciate it. Mm-hmm. It's beautifully dated.
Beautifully dated. 90s girls.
Yeah, the Joey Lauren Adams with the high voice and the nips. There were nips.
Well, for sure. That was the thing in those in that kind of 90s, that style of 90s movie. There was always like either raver type girls, but nips, all nips.
Yeah, there was usually like the baseball tee, nips ablazing, like the Adidas, nips ablazing.
Nips ablazing.
Sweater, like wool sweater, nips ablazing.
Nips ablazing.
Real cold. Anyway, so yeah, we have Alex Barnard on this episode, and it was interesting, man. Like, we got into some weird stuff.
Yeah, it was kind of a broad thread of conversation. It went kind of everywhere in a good way. Really enjoyed it.
Well, and you can find everything that has to do with our show at boyspodcast.com. And you can email us at boyspodcast@aol.com.
AOL.com. You can aim. I still haven't downloaded that damn app. I'm going to do it because I want to get aimed. Also, you can donate. There is a donate button. We've already had a couple of donations, and that is amazing. Thank you so much for your support. Again, share if you like it. Share it. You know, we're doing our thing, and if you enjoy us doing our thing,
do your thing.
Do your thing. You know.
All right. Without further ado,
Alex Barnard.
Hey, bro, what are you drinking? Oh, this? It's an Anthem Arjuna. What about you? Just beer? Oh.
This episode of Boys is brought to you in part by Anthem Brewing Company, located in the heart of Oklahoma City.
Check them out online at anthembrewing.com.
If it is an anthem,
it's just beer.
We're here tonight with Alex Barnard of Sex Snobs and
Welcome.
Other bands over the years. And I asked you, we had Adam's birthday get together here a couple weeks ago, and I was wanting to have you on. And yeah, I asked, and you said you'd do it. So here you are.
I'm a man of my word.
You are.
Here I am.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
It was nice that you didn't bullshit and be like, oh yeah, man, I'm there. And then like, don't answer a text. You know?
That'd be a dick move.
So
Be a total dick move.
did you find the place okay?
Yeah.
Cool. Well, this is our, what episode is this? Sixth, seventh, something like that?
One of the two.
I don't know. We're just getting off the ground here,
Yeah.
but thanks for listening. And you can find everything in the world of Boys Podcast at boyspodcast.com. It's got our portal to social media, all that good stuff. And if you would take a moment to review this on iTunes or wherever you get this from, it would be really helpful.
And donate if you feel the need to donate.
Yep. And we have been getting a couple donations, and that's awesome. So
thank you for your
thank
donation.
you. I joined the website LinkedIn. The young professional go-getter website. Uploaded the photo, uploaded the resume, did all that shit. So as I'm setting this up, I get to this point where I clicked the wrong button and it emailed every single person that I have ever emailed in my Gmail account.
Which means everyone you've emailed, friends, coworkers,
Craigslist deals?
Craigslist deals, all that shit.
Everything.
Sorry, how'd that happen?
I thought
Because I want to know.
when you're setting up your account, it came to this step where it was like, can we sync with your Gmail account? And I thought, okay, well that's good because that'll tell me if somebody that I know is on there. No, it sent 4,350 emails out. And so I have a job right now, and I'm not in a big hurry to leave, but I was like, I just graduated. I want to see what's out there. Who knows? Maybe something better would come along. And one of the 4,350 people was my boss. And
Oh shit.
yeah, and I was at work the other day, and I'm getting something out of the copy machine, and he comes by and he says, "Hey, I got your email on LinkedIn. In fact, I got 3 different emails from you to his business account, his personal email, and his old email that he never checks, but it accidentally went off on his phone." And he's like, "You looking for another job?" And I was like, "Well, no, I'm not in a big hurry to leave. I was just setting it up because I have an account, and I figured I'd put my resume, or not my resume. I figured I'd put the fact that I was a college graduate on there, whatever." So I kind of skirted by that. But LinkedIn turned my life into a living hell for about 48 hours, because not only did it email everyone I ever emailed, but they kept sending me emails, and this person denied your request, this person accepted your request. It was insane. I felt like such an asshole.
So did you like email your resume to like an ex-girlfriend or something
Yes,
like that?
many.
Yeah, everybody, and that's hilarious.
Oh,
it's like that's such a Curb Your Enthusiasm like moment.
Oh, the music was
Yeah.
playing in my head. Yeah, and then I finally, okay, the other thing about LinkedIn, they don't make it easy to go in and undo something like
Sure.
that. So not only was it emailing 4,350 emails, but it sent multiple. It would do it like every 6 hours. Like imagine, Alex, like if we had emailed in the past, like not only did you get the initial request, but like 6 hours later, it would be like, Robbie Harris is waiting on your reply. And then the next day, don't forget about Robbie Harris, log in. And then if you don't have a LinkedIn, it would send you these spam emails like, sign up for LinkedIn, see what you're missing out on. I got so many texts and phone calls and emails like, what the fuck are you doing, dude?
Pissed.
Yes.
Yeah, just people.
People were sending screen caps to me like, look how many emails you sent me in the last like 48 hours. So I get on the website and I'm digging in, trying to figure out. And like I said, they don't make it easy. It was buried in the settings.
All that shit usually is.
So finally, I did some Googling and I found the remedy. I had to go in and delete every single contact manually. It took me about 6 hours to do it. Clickbox, delete. Are you sure you want to delete? Yes.
There's no
Refresh
like
the
select
page.
all.
Nope. Not that I could find. I dug.
That's terrible.
So yeah, lesson learned. Don't try to get a better job, I guess.
So fuck LinkedIn, right?
I guess. I mean, that might work for some people, but
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't. If you live some sort of like sterile like lifestyle, like you're gonna become the president of the United States, there's nobody that like, oh, I can email my resume to everyone I know, period. Like if you're that person, then it works. But
Yeah.
aside from that, if there's like, I don't know.
well, like if you're Obama, b.obama@president.gov, you probably have a nice like streamlined database of people you
and
email.
it's probably pretty minimal too.
Right,
Not a
yeah.
lot.
But
yeah.
it was horrible.
Yeah, but I don't know. I don't even know what to say about that. That's like so crazy. It was like 4,000, you said?
4,350.
There's so many fucking emails.
That sucks.
And I felt like I was in a nightmare. You ever had a nightmare where you know you're in the nightmare and you're like, just wake up. Just wake up.
Yeah, and you're like, this is unreasonable. 4,000. Nothing works this way.
It wasn't 100 people.
Yeah.
How would they even allow it to get sent to that many people?
Yeah, that would be like if you actually were at work and you looked down and you were naked. And you're like, come on, this isn't real. But in your case, it like, I was
Totally
aiming to
happened.
fruition. It was totally real.
I was dick out, and the dick was hard.
Yeah.
Like there was no like hiding it under the desk. It was sticking out.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
So yeah, that's been my week. What about you,
Cool.
Josh?
Been busy week. A lot going on. 2 podcasts in 1 week. That's cool.
We are going out of town next week.
I am going out of town. I'm going to Las Vegas next week for punk rock bowling, which I've never been. I've never been to Vegas. Have you ever been to Las Vegas?
I have been through Las Vegas.
Never stopped.
No, I've driven through it. And I've been at the airport, but I've never like, hung out in Las Vegas.
I've heard it's super fucking. I'm anxious about being in heat all day long. 'Cause it's a 3-day festival. I don't want to be outside hot.
I don't think. I mean, if you live here, I don't think there's that much to worry about. It's just dry.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just
Florida heat.
well, I mean, you just like, yeah. I mean, it's just dry. You find yourself drinking water all the time. You know, in that state, you're just like, oh man, and it's the desert. So it's kind of different. But I mean, it's not like, I don't know. It gets really hot here. I mean,
Yeah,
it gets
it
pretty
does.
overbearing.
Yeah, not today though. Fucking rainy as shit.
There you go.
I feel like we've been lucky so far. Like, you know, our winter wasn't too bad, and
Not
then
at all.
Summer's here, or it's getting here, but like today was like hoodie weather. And
It's been the past couple of days. It's been nice.
Does that have to do with El Nino? I don't really know how El Nino and La Nina work.
I don't
There's
know.
a huge,
Sure, yeah,
El
yeah.
Nino.
That could be it.
I just feel like, and maybe it's just because I'm getting older, but I feel like everything is falling apart, man. Like all the stuff in the news, like this whole transgender bathroom issue, and then like our schools
Yeah.
crumbling, and then like today the bridge over
On
Northwest
May?
Expressway in
That's
May
crazy.
collapsed. I saw photos
Yeah.
of it, and I was like, holy shit, like how bad's it gotta get before we turn it around, and will we turn it around?
You mean like as a state, or just as like as a nation, or as a
I
civil?
think on a minimal level, like on the smallest level, our state, because our state fucking, like, it's so backwards and ridiculous. Like today, I don't know if it's like legislation passed or something, but it was initially saying that any doctors that perform abortions will be arrested.
It's
with
a felony.
Felony.
Yeah.
And then your license will be suspended. Like, isn't that like against like federal law?
Yeah, I would. I didn't hear about that, but I would assume that's
Assume
against.
so.
Yeah,
But that's a lot of that goes with all a bunch of other things that are happening in our fucking state that go against, like, I don't know where this is coming from, why all this is happening. Too, that bridge thing, as soon as I heard about that collapse, I'm like, well, that's going to be money that they're not going to want to spend on
That we
that.
don't have.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's I guess it's personally it's
Not to get all economics talk. or
no,
whatever.
it's fine. Personally, I'm talking about the stuff on more of a local level. Like,
Okay.
Okay. So as far as the abortions and the being a felony, I hope that possibly the Supreme Court can just like slap that down. Like,
Yeah.
no, that's not how it works nowadays.
I really would be surprised if it didn't turn out that way. You know what I mean?
Well, in the same week, we also had the, like, we don't do topical things on here, but it's so fucking crazy. The, if a person is intoxicated, you can still perform oral sex, or they can
Receive it.
They can, yeah, and it's not considered rape. That's fucking ridiculous.
Yeah.
So if a girl's passed out drunk and you fuck her mouth while she's passed out, you technically didn't rape her. That is insane. That is insane to me.
Yeah.
So, one other crazy piece of shit our state's doing.
That was a really, really weird court case. They got into, the P's and Q's of what is oral sodomy. That was like a big part. Of
Right.
That, I mean, like,
But that's something
Some
that's even
pretty-
against our state law anyway. Like,
yeah, I think, it's important. It's important to keep in mind how many like backwards things slip under the radar in this state and stuff gets passed, but I don't know. I mean, it's not all bad, given the whole like Trump thing recently. I mean, voter turnout. I mean, we, Bernie Sanders, like we've had a lot better voter turnout
for sure.
Gay marriage in Oklahoma and that sort of thing. So, I mean, it's not all It's not all bad.
No,
but
I think we're slowly getting out of this. I don't want to say straight Republican funk, but this backwards thinking, or just, I guess, archaic, dated thinking, like, you know, blast from the past. We're all black and white. Now we're all seeing in color, kind of a thing. It's what it feels like when you think of it. Like we've been so behind with the rest of the country that we're kind of catching up, and I think the entire country is catching up. But that being said, you know, like you said, is every on a global level, is everything kind of falling? It seems really weird that things are just. I think we're just being bombarded. I think it has to do with the internet, and not just the internet, but how fast information comes to you. Like within seconds, you know, second news, like you just found it out. I think maybe that's what's like why there's such a the transgender thing, and like all this. There's new like mansplaining, and like all these buzzwords. You're like, when did this has not always been a thing. Like this is so new. And I think I think like it's really like you really can't get discouraged and say like, oh, the world's falling apart and that sort of thing, because what you're experiencing is just this like heightened level of transparency that's happening with technology and communication, transparency that didn't exist. I mean, you think like, you know, you think Bill Clinton is the only president who got his dick sucked and no. You just figured it out and heard about it. Yeah.
You know, it's just like when, you know, like when Vietnam was on your television in your living room, and all of a sudden, you know, the American perception of war
changed
drastically. So, you know, I think that's a big thing. I think states like Oklahoma are really, you know, less, you know, we're less culturally diverse than some other states. We have, you know, Native Americans, and then, you know, they're for the most part pretty separated. You know what I mean? There's a big schism there. So when you have cultures that are really kind of like set in this way, what you have is you have a lot of people that have dissenting views that just tolerate it or apologize it, and they don't vote about it. So like an example of that is like in Japan. Japan has like really weird sex laws. They have one of the lowest age of consent. They have crazy porn laws about what you can show, what you can't, yada yada. And you're like, man, I mean, Japanese culture is so weird. Why do they have laws about this stuff? And that's our perception as Americans. But what's actually going on is that these laws are just super old, and nobody in Japan votes. They have a worse voter turnout than the United States.
Yeah.
And they're so culturally rooted, and they have so much of a cultural identity that they're just sort of like, yeah, no, you just don't smoke weed. You don't do it. Well, what if I want to? Well, you just don't. You get in trouble, and you just don't do that. You know what I mean? And people do smoke weed in Japan, but it's like you get in way more trouble, you know. But these laws are just super old, and they just have nobody votes on them. And I think that is a lot of the stuff you see in Oklahoma. You're just sort of like, you know, other people show up and they're like, I mean, when we were kids, you couldn't get a tattoo, you know, but you could, like, technically you could go to a cockfight. I mean, you know what I mean? I mean, like, that's not because we're like, woo, you know, cockfights, like, fuck tattoos. It's because nobody voted.
Yeah, for sure.
So, you know.
Well, that's the weird thing about Japan. And again, this is just from my like narrow scope American point of view, but they are very repressed about certain things.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
But then like you hear the stories about like the panties in the vending machine and the bars where you can go and you can see the waitresses walk in a glass ceiling above you and see up their skirts. But that to me is just, that feeds that oppression. It makes it more taboo.
What's like the loophole? That's I can't pay for sex, but I can get real close to it if I can buy a pair of used panties in a vending machine, or I can go to a thing, or like S&M dens are huge there too. Like it's as close as you can get.
In Japan and Korea, they just really have this like new, like they bring new meaning to the term like work hard, play hard. It's like installed in their culture. It's like they work hard and play hard. And when they play hard, you know, like when they, you know, when you sit down, you want to watch TV, it's crazy. Like Japanese TV is crazy. When Trey Miller was living in Japan on an army base, he would always watch TV and he'd be like, yeah, that stuff's just on. And like, he would tell me about shows in Japan. I'm like, that's insane. And when I watch Japanese television, it's like, it's just like it makes our TV just seem so tame.
They brought some shows from Japan, not a lot, but I remember that it may still be on. I don't really have cable anymore, but there's like Wild and Out. Is that what it was?
Yeah.
Where like you're on crazy obstacle courses and
Wipeout.
Wild
and Out was Nick Cannon's show.
That was Wild and Out.
Yeah, which was also pretty sweet.
That was pretty sweet. That may have been Japanese. Probably not. But yeah, like that kind of shit. Like, why are they what's the purpose of this game? There's no winner. You're just getting knocked off a giant thing into.
Well, it went back to like most extreme challenge. I think that was the predecessor.
Yeah, that is what that show was. Is it was like, because it was on what channel was that on? I'm trying to remember.
I don't remember.
But you know how it had like American dubbing over it that was like real cheesy. You're not really paying attention to the characters, but if you notice, they're in a castle and they're like these like daimyo medieval Japanese noblemen. They're like they're like gentry, and the original show is called Takashi's Castle, and it's like a samurai themed thing, and you're like storming a daimyo's castle, and the spectators of the show are sitting, having tea, and they have fans, and they're just like, oh, they'll never reach the cat. That show is even like way older. It's kind of like the Power Rangers thing. How we, like when we watch Power Rangers as a kid, there's like the scenes of them at the milkshake shop, and it's like shot like it was shot like that year.
Yeah.
And then when they're fighting, it's from like, I don't even...
Or like 10 years earlier Japanese
yeah,
show.
Or it's like it was a 15-year-old show. That's how Takeshi's Castle is. It's just like these Americans found this crazy Japanese game show, and they're like, what the fuck is this? Mm-hmm. And they just put like funny, renamed it and put funny American dubbing on it. Yeah.
It's strange though. Like I said, like I just have this small window, and it's the internet basically is to see things all around the world. And you said, Japanese TV is so extreme, but it's extreme in a different way. Like American TV there might be certain aspects of American television that's extreme to Japanese people. Like
you're
probably
right.
The sexual stuff.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Yeah.
I mean, we all know the thing about Japanese porn, like they blur out the bits, and I've watched some of that in my years of doing the things that guys do, and it's oddly hot still, though. And I don't know
because
why.
It's taboo. You're not seeing.
Well, they're
it.
not covering much up, I mean,
It's literally
you're getting
like
99%.
But it leaves that 1% to the imagination.
I guess it's a big 1%.
Depending on the guy, but I've been through phases. I'm like, I'm gonna check that out. I haven't checked in with Japan in a few years. I'm gonna see what's going on over here.
There.
And if I do come around to that, which I'm gonna make a note tomorrow, let's put that in. But I'm like, I don't know. It's oddly arousing because like American porn, Jesus Christ, like it's insane.
Yeah,
it's insane,
it's
man.
insane.
Sometimes I yearn for the days of a Playboy. Mm-hmm. I yearn for the days of not wide open and everything. It's insane,
and it's so readily available. I've been thinking about that, like friends of ours or who who have kids, and especially who are maybe in their late adolescence, maybe even going into early teens. Like that kid is definitely jerking it. A lot. It's right there on your phone.
But every
kid has a phone.
We all did though.
But I mean,
maybe he's over it at this point because it's on his phone.
Maybe they're getting just desensitized. They're like, fucking yeah, I get it. She's sucking a dude's dick. Blah blah blah. Who cares? But like when we had it, like you had to like find a magazine, and it was a magazine. And if you were lucky enough to find video, it was a cassette or
just one
cassette or a DVD. And that's it. And that's all you had. And you would rewatch those same fucking scenes. And it got to the point where, I've seen it, whatever. But there's so many options, so many categories, so many tabs, so many subcategories that it's like, how does one...
I think that the internet, well, the internet obviously changed everything about pornography. But it's funny kind of to think about how it changed the culture of pornography, because like there's never gonna be like, you know, like boogie nights, that kind of thing. Is not gonna, you know, like this
Storyline is never,
well, just this like family and this industry about it. I mean, there is an industry, but it's just so immediate, and there's just a
Right.
you know, an HD camera on everything. Oh, you know, my wallet's got a camera on it. You just film it. I mean, you know what I mean? It wasn't like you had to have a gaffer.
Right?
You know what I mean?
A boom mic operator.
A boom mic, yeah. I mean, and so, so.
Are there companies bringing back production value to porn, or do you think there's any like hangers on?
Playboy, I think, is hanging on.
But they
Is Vivid, is that still?
But Playboy, you heard that like I think their January of 2016 or maybe it was March was the last Playboy
really?
that features nudity.
Oh, really?
They're wiping out nudity completely. They already have. The very last Playboy that had nudity featured, and I saw this on Reddit or something, but it featured Pamela Anderson.
Yeah.
And it was like her return to Playboy, and it was like this milestone because it was their very last issue to show actual nudity. It's still going to be like a gentleman's magazine, like a Maxim or whatever.
How long ago was that?
This was this year. I think it was like
that's
January.
Okay, it's because, like I said on a couple podcasts ago, I went to California and I was in the airport and you're killing time before a flight, hop into Hudson News, because what the fuck else are you going to do? And, you know, you look through, like, you see the rows of magazines, and they have the adult ones that have that black card cover over it so you can't see anything, and there was just a Playboy sitting kind of near where the GQs and, like, details and all that stuff is. I'm like, why does that do in there?
No more tits.
No more tits.
Nope. Which, I mean, Playboy, growing up, like, that was pretty vanilla.
Mild, yeah. I mean, who cares? I mean, Playboy is just like, I mean, it's just this sort of like phenomenon of Americana at this point.
Sure.
Like, it's just like, oh, I'm an MTV, blah, blah, we're at the grotto at the Playboy, you know what I mean? It's just
Playboy
kind of
Mansion.
you know, it's like something that you'd stop and see on Route 66 or something.
To me, it's like the kiss of porn.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
it's like
it's
it's
just a
everywhere, it's iconic,
Well, it
but
was
there's
the
not much
first.
substance.
You know, it was the first of its kind. I mean, it's kind of classic in that sense that, you know, what did it start in, like the 1950s or 60s or 60s?
Early 60s, I think, yeah.
And like it was a bar, it was a club first, you know, and like the waitresses all wore those Playboy bunny outfits, and it was kind of sexy for back then. And then it kind of went into this whole, and they always stayed kind of classy. Did they ever show full?
No, I mean, it was arty. You know,
Yeah.
I've seen a few Playboys in my
And then
35 years.
Hustler was right on the heels of that and got real raunchy.
That was when I saw like P for the first time.
In a
Like,
Hustler?
Yeah, like I saw a Hustler, and I can remember this magazine like vividly. It had this woman on the front, and she was holding a black paddle, like a leather paddle, and in studs, like the punk studs, you know, pyramid studs, it said spank on it. And I remember that was like the first...
Double entendre there.
Right. It was the first double entendre I ever saw. No, it was the first like kind of S&M thing I ever saw. And I was probably like 14 when I saw it. It was actually mixed in my dad's motocross magazines. He had a couple of Playboys. My dad wasn't the guy with the porn in the neighborhood. He was pretty white bread, but he had a couple of Playboys. And in his big stacks of magazines in his closet, he would read like dirt bike magazines like crazy. So these magazines were turned around so the binding was on the back side.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And I saw the Playboy
Stealth.
first, and like I had these moments. Like I'd come home, I'd rush home from school, and I'd have my Playboy time. You know, and I didn't even know what I was doing back then. I was just looking and feeling funny.
It's
and-
boobs.
It was just
Yeah.
wrong. It was
Yeah.
just like, I'm not supposed to do it.
Right.
Curious, yeah.
So then I went down deeper in the stack, and I found this Penthouse. Or no, Hustler. It was a Hustler. And it had the girl on the front. It said spank. And so I'm flipping through, and I'm like, whoa, this one's a little more risque. Like it was showing more. And then I flipped the page, and this girl's taking a piss, like on the sidewalk. And my mind was blown.
You were like, what is this? Yeah.
I was like, pee-pee? Really?
Pee-pee?
And now you
is this
can
a
go-
mistake?
Right.
Yeah.
Call the editor. What's this in
Yeah.
there?
How did this slip through? Somebody must have wanted to get fired or something.
Yeah.
And now there's like a whole category on Pornhub, just piss porn, you know?
And I'm not looking down on that. To
No,
each their
no,
own.
sure.
Whatever
Everyone's
anybody's
got their
into,
thing.
that's cool. But as a 14-year-old kid, I was totally just like, what is this? And what did I get myself into? And I felt like bad. I felt like it wasn't just some boobs.
Yeah.
I was like, this is next level shit.
Oh, yeah.
As a 14-year-old, and I felt guilty almost.
My dad just didn't give a shit about that sort of stuff, so I saw that stuff so early, and I could just watch any of that stuff or look at it. So, you know, I mean, like one time, like he had like it was in the 90s, so he had like some sort of like satellite TV or something like that, and he like paid for all these channels, and me and my older brother one summer figured out that we could just like order shit, like order movies, and we, from the remote, and I don't even think we knew that it was like racking up stuff on our dad's credit card. So we spent like, you know, like $80 or something, you know, which is a lot.
Sure.
I mean, because I don't even think we know. So we just watch one for 10 minutes, and turn it off, you know? And I remember my dad getting super pissed at me and my brother and yelling at us. And he had the bill that he got in the mail. And he was like, you know, like, you spent like $80 or like $100 on fucking TV porn. And he was like, I pay for Cinemax, it's channel blah blah blah. Like, why the fuck did you order it? We already, you know, he didn't
Basically,
care.
like, just go to that channel
Just
after
watch
midnight.
it.
There's gonna be tits.
Yeah, he was like, there's softcore porn already on there. Why would
Yeah,
you
that's hilarious.
order it? Yeah.
Well, I wonder, you know, looking back, I wonder what's the difference between the boy who had the dad with the porn and the boy who didn't have the dad with the porn, so he's like seeked the porn out through his friends or finding it on the side of the road or stealing it from the gas station or whatever. I was pretty sheltered as a kid, raised in church. Like I said, my dad had a couple of Playboys, didn't have any tapes. I didn't see my first porno video until I was probably like 15. And it was a friend's house, and his older brother gave it to him, and we would like ritualistically like watch it. Like, the parents would go to bed, and we would like take it out and quietly put it in the VCR, make sure we didn't shut because it was one of those old school like where you shut the top of the VCR.
Yeah, it's
and
like top loading.
and we would turn it down and just get so close to the TV and just like, and you know, get our little woodies going or whatever. And it was such a ritual. But like, I wonder, you know, was it a bad thing that I was sheltered? Was it a good thing? Did it not matter? I would love to see some sort of hard research on that.
Sure. Email us.
Yeah.
Give us your stories.
I mean, I definitely like when I would get porn and stuff like that, I was never worried. And my mom was so cool and so afraid of, you know, like warping her two sons sexually that they'd be like afraid. Oh, something, you know, she'd be like, you know, but my mom and my dad, even when they were split up, were always just like, this is what a condom is. Please use it. You know, they were just like, that was never a thing. And so if I ever got porn, I found porn in the trash or something like that, I like stick it under my mattress. But like, I was never afraid I was going to get caught. I just didn't want to talk about sex, about it, because I didn't, you know, whatever. But yeah, and I mean, I think, I don't know. I think like that made me like more nonchalant about it at the time. But the thing is I don't know if that kind of stuff really has this big, like, cathartic Freudian mold on who you are as an adult. I think it's more of a nuance. You know what I mean? I mean, the more you become an adult, the more kind of like obscured those aspects, I think, of your childhood are. And it's just sort of like, maybe you were eager for it at the time, but I don't know if it really makes that big of a difference.
I don't think it makes a huge difference. I do think there is a difference, though, because growing up the way I did, and again, this is through my little tunnel vision, you know, but growing up the way I did, man, for the longest time, any sexual act, and this is probably because I was raised in church, but like, there was so much guilt that came along with it. So much guilt and so much being scared. This is how scared I was. So I'm 18, 19 years old. I have this girlfriend, and for my birthday, she gave me a blowjob, and this was like one of my first ones ever, right? Okay, so I was like, oh my God, this is awesome. And we break up like a month later, and she calls me and says, I'm pregnant, and it's yours. And I'm like, the first thought through my head was, bullshit, I know how this works.
But wait.
what if? What if it went somewhere?
What if it works like that?
Or what if it went somewhere and she rolled over in her sleep and what if? And I got so scared and I thought, oh, my life is fucked. Like, oh no. But then I would go back and forth like, oh, she's full of shit.
Yeah.
She's a trifling bitch, to I'm going to be an 18-year-old dad. And, or I didn't know, but the guilt involved,
Sure.
Spanking it when I was a kid, like I'd spank it and then I'd go to church and the pastor or the youth pastor would be like, if you touch yourself immorally, that's bad and you're going to hell. And
Yeah.
to me, that was way worse than any parental guidance.
Oh, for sure. It's the ultimate guidance. It's God.
Right.
Maybe there is a difference because I never experienced anything,
No guilt?
Anything? No.
So
No
lucky.
guilt.
So lucky.
So you weren't raised in a church environment.
No.
Lucky
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
Not at all.
So let's go back. You said your parents were divorced?
Yeah.
Okay. When did that happen?
Oh.
This is when we get into the therapy session.
Yeah. I was right after like kindergarten, like first grade.
Okay, so you were pretty young.
Oh yeah. Very
Okay.
young, yes.
See, my parents got divorced when I was about 14. And
Oh.
again, going back to how did these things shape you as an
21.
adult. You were 21? Okay, so we got the whole spectrum
Yeah,
here.
the whole spectrum.
Yeah.
I just wonder, my parents fought for fucking years. I mean, knock down, drag out, horrible shit for many years. I remember being young and praying that my parents would get divorced.
Yeah.
Please. My dad worked nights. My mom stayed at home with us at nights. She was big time alcoholic. Rest in peace, Mom. But she would just get real drunk at night and kind of let us do whatever we wanted. Like I could play all the Nintendo I wanted as long as I didn't bother her while she was like in the kitchen smoking a cigarette, drinking a beer, talking on the phone to one of her girlfriends every single night,
Yeah.
So part of me wishes they would have got divorced when I was way younger, so my dad could have came in and saved the day like he did when we were much older. So what was it like for you? Like,
Well,
was it hard? Was it hard when you were a kid?
I think divorce. I mean, yeah. I mean, it's hard on kids. I don't. That really like is such a minuscule, part of my childhood. I don't even think. I don't think it like screwed me up or anything. I think that I kind of had the opposite dynamic. Like my dad, had his stumbles and stuff like that, and he, we had joint custody, and it was. I mean, I was very blessed for the fact that my parents got divorced early, and there wasn't this like constant fighting and turmoil in the house. It was just like they were separate by the time I was like, in the second grade, or first or second grade. So I think because they didn't stay together for the kids, it was better. But my dad was, just always like, like partying and just like, and just like the cool dad. He didn't care. My mom was more structured and that sort of thing. So like, I could do whatever I wanted at my dad's house, and for a week or whatever, and then like go to my mom's house, and it was like there were like home cooked meals and like structure and that sort of thing. Do your homework, and then I'd go to my dad's house and just like fuck off and experiment, be crazy, which I think was a really
A good
awesome
balance.
dynamic to
Yeah.
have for your whole life. Like, maybe I'll just wait a week to get in trouble or whatever. Not that I got in trouble a lot as a kid, but I mean, like, yeah, my dad let me do whatever the hell I wanted. So,
It almost sounds like having both of those dynamics might make you a better person.
Sure.
Instead of just having one or the other.
Yeah.
Because if you had two partying parents, then you're probably going to knock somebody up or get fucked up young, you know.
Get
but if you
arrested,
have
something like that.
if you have the two like really strict parents, then you're going to be a square, a nerd, sheltered,
Or you might
whatever.
go the other way and be
or
like one of
rebel,
those.
yeah.
Yeah.
until you get a drop of freedom, you know what I mean? And then you
Yeah.
go crazy. And it's not like my dad was like, you know, my dad was responsible and my mom was more structured and that sort of thing. But my mom has always also been, you know, not super liberal about raising her, but she just, you know, she never told me I could, I don't know. I could always do something logically within reason. It was never like, oh, you just can't go to his house, or oh, you have to go to church, or oh, you can't have this hair color. So I'm like, she's never like that. You know, my mom was super cool. I think when you have that sort of freedom and that room, and your parents respect you, because a lot of parents don't respect their kids. They're like, oh, you don't know shit.
Yeah.
But, you know, my parents had like a genuine, you know, respect for me. And they were just like, well, if you don't want to play a sport, then don't. If you want to play an instrument, play an instrument. And so like now I think it's way easier to have like a really genuine relationship with my mother. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't think a lot of people are friends with their parents. Some people are, but I'm really good friends with my mother, you know, and I go out to lunch with her and hang out with her like a friend. And I don't have to worry about like, you know, oh, I'm going to say something about sex, or I'm going to disappoint her, or,
Right.
you know, she's going to cry or something like that. You know, my mom's just not like that. It's more like hanging out with a cool big sister or something like that. You know, I can just be like, well, you know, so I don't know, like she would never, when I was growing up, she would never be like, oh, you can smoke weed in the house or anything like that. It wasn't one of the like those things.
The
but
cool
like,
mom.
Yeah, but like when my brother, like my brother moved out when he was 17, and he was just like, oh yeah, I get high all the time and that sort of thing. And she was like, oh, I don't give a shit, you know.
So you mentioned playing music and stuff. Did you have a moment growing up where you transitioned from something into playing music? Like, when did you start playing guitar, or whatever instrument led you into what you're doing now?
Well, my parents bought me a guitar, or my mom bought me a guitar when I was 13, and I kind of fiddled with it, and then just like didn't have the discipline to really learn it. Then I really actually learned to play the guitar at 16, and kind of fiddled around with the idea of like playing in a band, but never had the discipline to go through with it. I was really like completely geared towards visual art from like a really young age, and that's what I wanted to do, and that's what I wanted to do with my life. And I tried to do that, you know, in high school. I was just like painting, and I wanted to go to college, wanted to go to art school and all this stuff. And when I was 18, like right after high school, I went on tour in a band, and I kind of like, I didn't really get into a good college, even though I scored really, really well in art and AP art and that sort of thing on the AP art exam. And I kind of like just scratching the surface and investigating art school and gallery art. I was just like, I definitely had a moment where I was like, this is bullshit.
Yeah.
Right.
And I was like, this is not like, I am definitely going to do music and be very serious about this, and fuck the painting thing.
So that's when you had like the switch went off.
Yeah. And I just realized that that there wasn't ever going to be like any school or academia that was going to propel me in the things that I wanted to do. And I think college is so cool, and I think furthering your education is really awesome. And, you know, my friend Jorge loves physics and he loves math. And if you love physics and math, college is badass. It's just a candy store. You just go and do physics all day. I mean, you know, but there's just, I don't know. I think that ACM at UCO, there are a lot of awesome people pouring their heart and soul into that in Oklahoma City. And that elevates a lot of people and opens a lot of doors. And it's a really awesome, positive thing but they're really like the biggest thing. And you know, and any teacher there will tell you the same thing. You just have to do it for yourself. Like you just, that's just how, I think that's just how art has to work in general. I mean, I think that the academia attached to visual art is kind of a sham.
Well, for instance, like, I agree. Like, for instance, if you go to like OU or UCO or wherever, if you want to really be an artist, why the fuck do you have to take all these other courses? Like, I understand basic core curriculum and like your basics, you know, but I just graduated and half the shit I learned there, like, I'm never going to use. Like, why wasn't I, instead of taking a class on Japanese vampire history, why couldn't I take another class on like Adobe After Effects or something that I'm really going to use? And I'm speaking art, whether it's like music, painting, being like a stonemason or a plumber, like that's an art to me. Like somebody that like loves their job and like is really good at like woodworking. Or for many years, my dad did drywall. And to me, that was his art. It was beautiful. Like this in here looks like shit compared to what the art that my dad did. But he poured his heart and soul into that, even though it seems like a Joe job and a job that anybody could do, like a day laborer could do or whatever. He was so good at it that he made really good money and got to stand back at the end of the day and be like, look at what I did and be real proud of it.
Well, I think there's like I don't know, people divide craftsmanship from artistry like in a really kind of unfortunate way. I think like a lot of crafts aren't looked at with the art that they inherently have, and a lot of art is, you know, robbed of how much craftsmanship is involved.
Right.
I think that, you know, a lot of people look at people who do construction and architecture and build furniture and that kind of stuff, or, you know, and they look at it more as like a craft and not an art, when there's not, I mean, there's no divide between that and being a fine artist, I don't think. And you can sit around and try and argue that there is, but I just don't see it. And I also think that people, when you're an artist, really love to have this easy out, and they'll just say like, "Oh, you're so talented. You're so talented. I wish I had that talent," or whatever. And you know, maybe in some instances they're right about people, but a lot of times it's bullshit, and a lot of times it's a cop out, because like, man, this person just like worked his ass off at the guitar. Yeah, he just practiced and practiced and practiced. Just like you have to practice to make a really good fucking table or something, you know what I mean? Like, and I think that a lot of musicians and a lot of artists in general are looked at this thing like they're all prodigies, and it's like they're
takes time.
Most aren't. Most just work their ass off.
Sure.
You know.
This is so crazy. We're talking about this. I come home last night from I got to halftime of the game. And got tired. Long day. I went home, laid in bed, put on Netflix, and just this movie was, the documentary popped up called Beautiful Losers. Have you seen it?
No.
Seemed really fucking interesting, so I turned it on. It's about, it's a documentary about these artists, and it's about basically the rise of I really don't know how to describe it, like street art, I guess, from the 1990s and up. Had like Harmony Korine, had filmmakers and musicians and all these tag artists, the Twisters thing. So it's talking to all these different artists on different, various different modes of art, and it was really cool. And they were all saying basically what you were just saying, that, you know, it doesn't matter what you do, just do it. That's all I've wanted to do, because you can tell they're being asked questions, but they're not, you don't hear the question. And this guy's painting, and he goes, "What did I want to be when I grew up?" And he's painting, and he's thinking about it, he goes, "What did I want to, I guess I just wanted to make stuff." And another guy was like, "I wanted to be a garbage man." Like they just have these weird things. Like then I realized I didn't want to do that either. So you just start like making stuff, and whatever you do. And one guy was talking about it's crazy that when you're a kid in kindergarten, first grade, whatever, like you do art, you play with crayons, you make paper mache, you do stuff like that, and then all of a sudden as an adult you're not supposed to do that anymore. And
yeah, that's
what the fuck? Why? Like,
yeah, that's totally a thing. People lose like this sort of, I don't know, children approach living their lives with this sort of playfulness because they don't know any better. That's just innate. And I think a lot of people like lose that. You know what I mean? They just, a kid doesn't know what it's doing. I mean, he's just making shit. You know what I mean? Because he's bored. Yeah, I don't know. Art is, being an artist, you just hear the word talent thrown around when it's just an arbitrary, thing to say about someone. 'Cause being an artist has everything to do with prerogative as opposed to, your innate ability to do it or your skill. Like, you know what I mean? Like
your skill level.
You're going to get better at it if you do it. The people who are artists are the people who decide to make art. Period.
Like, regardless of what it is.
But like, decide to make art and to take it seriously regardless of skill level.
Right.
Yeah, you have to labor to do it. I mean, you have to, and I'm not trying to make the case of, the tortured artist or whatever. I mean, like, art is it's self-serving. I mean, it's fulfilling.
It's extremely subjective too. I mean, it's something that one person might think something is fucking amazing. Another person might go, that's just some doodles on a piece of paper. You know what I mean?
But I mean, the point is that some people stop doodling and some people keep doodling, and that's the only clear-cut discriminator that you can place on the thing. It's just like, are you an artist? Do you decide to make art? I mean, most people don't. Most people decide to most people are like, oh, I'd like to circuit bend that. That sounds fun. And then they don't.
Well,
and then other people sit around for hours and do it. I mean, you know what I mean? Like,
but like whether it's art or music or whatever, like, you have your Rembrandt, you have your Basquiat. Okay, two totally different types of art. A lot of people look at Basquiat, that type of art, and be like, oh, anybody could do that. It's a skill. It's just a different kind of skill. You look at a band like the Mars Volta, and then you look at a band like the Ramones, and it's like, they're both talented, they're both artists. It's just completely different. And just because the Ramones play 3 chords, that was their art, and they did it.
Well, yeah. Well, and I mean, the Ramones were, I mean, far more innovative in the way that Basquiat was. I mean, they were both people who were just fucking, starving in New York. I mean, Basquiat was like, like having sex for money so he could, it's like score crack, and he was fucking homeless, before he met Andy Warhol. And then in the span of a few years, he was a fucking millionaire and still didn't wear shoes because he was, I mean, you know what I mean? Like, that's pretty fucking crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, the Ramones, I mean, yeah, how could you, I don't know, how could you ever say that? I don't know if there's really another band that's that innovative. I mean, those dudes just like, well, we're doing this thing. It almost seemed like they pulled it from the ether. They were just those people.
Yeah. They created downstroke punk rock. You know what I mean?
They just like, they were those people before they had instruments on them, and then they put instruments on themselves, and they just kept being those people.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of how.
Well, not to sound trite, but in our lifetime, I mean, to me, like, Nirvana was kind of that. I mean, I don't know if they were as innovative as the Ramones were, but in my lifetime, they were the band that changed the scene. I wasn't around when like hair metal changed the scene. I wasn't around when like Black Sabbath changed the scene, or the Beatles, or going back and back and back. But Nirvana, and it's been talked about and beaten to the ground a million times, but they pretty much killed, Eddie Van Halen and all that tapping and spandex and all that shit.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, certainly Nirvana is not, the innovator of that aesthetic and that sound and that thing that became such a staple in the 90s. But I don't think a lot of people realize that, you know, the MTV and music videos in general were still before Smells Like Teen Spirit were still just dominated by, you know, Warrant and shit like that. And there really was. I think that's when people say, like, you know, Nirvana really, you know, invented this thing. It's not so much that they invented it. They were the band that broke through.
It. Right. Yeah, and there's tons of bands that were doing it.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just kind of like before that, the hair metal thing, there were just all these bands on Skid Row that were just, you know, just waiting. Like, it just wasn't, there was just so much stuff that came out of this kind of glam music that was this like proto hair metal thing that hadn't really broke yet. And then Come On Feel the Noise was like, you know, that was made. They made a music video for that, and then it was like in the span of a month, every major label was, you know, signing you. If you lived in LA, you had hair and you sang high. It was just like overnight.
Yeah.
You know, they were just signing everybody. And so I think, you know, that would, you know, Nirvana is that, you know, I think that happened, and it was all of a sudden, you know, they were on. I mean, I think that's when those bands started getting huge major label record contracts. And that's
and it's the same thing that happens over and over. Like now, you know, you had like your Mumford and Sons, and then if you had one of those big bass drums, you know, out in front of you, and you had a guy playing a banjo, and you had that haze, you know,
you looked like you were playing at the Civil War,
right? Yeah. You had the suspenders, and you know, you had one guy that was playing a fucking wash tub or something.
That was a thing that got pretty big.
Well, but it's the same. I mean, when the whole dubstep thing happened a few years ago or whatever, you know, you would hear these artists that you never heard before. Same with like emo bands, and same with like certain metal bands and new metal. Like how many shitty new metal bands did you hear of when that was booming?
But what's funny is I think new metal is a little different because like it's funny because like Korn is filled with such, I mean, the members of Korn are like the dumbest humans to ever walk the face of the earth.
Like Bakersfield white trash.
Yeah, but what's different about those people is they genuinely like invented that fucking thing. Like,
right.
You know what I mean? I can't think of anything that sounded like these people like really just found this thing in the dark. It's like, well, so-and-so likes the chap hip, so he's gonna slap the bass and blah, and it's just this stupid thing that just for some reason like was a chemical reaction and people just like loved it. You know, because I really don't think that there was like a emerging like group of bands that were making that sound. It was just like Korn happened, and then all these bands made bands to sound like Korn.
Well, you know, speaking of Korn, I mean, I grew up listening to that shit. In fact, speaking of white trash, my mom bought me the first Korn. Well, not bought me. I sound like white trash, but my mom bought the first Korn album on cassette.
The self-titled Korn?
The one with the girl on the swing.
Yeah, it's
bought it for me as a gift to my good friend when I was in junior high. And my white trash self took it home that night, opened it up, dubbed a copy for myself because I was so intrigued by it, and then put it back in the case and wrapped it up and gave it to my friend. And I wonder, when it comes to like the 7 strings and things like that, like did they just happen upon those by accident, or do you like? I wonder that, like, because that was the first band I ever saw with the 7 string.
There is there's a hilarious Ibanez Seventh Heaven promo video that's online that like Ibanez would send out on VHS tapes like for promo copies, so they would like play them in stores and stuff like that. And it is the guitarists of Korn and Wes Borland of Limp Bizkit talking about how they came on to 7.
I'm gonna have to watch this.
to watch it.
Yes.
I mean, they line out at all of your curiosities. You just
Perfect,
voiced.
because I remember like growing up, I started playing guitar when I was about 14, and I was buying the Guitar World magazines and learning the Chili Peppers tabs and the Blue on Black and all that cheesy cat rock from back then. And I remember seeing Monkey and Head from Korn in this one-page write-up about Korn, like right before they got real big, and they were wearing the Adidas oversized like sweat or hooded sweatshirts, running suits, and they had the old Universe like Steve Vai 7-strings that have like the crazy inlays and the diamond,
like the handle on it,
covered in duct tape and shit. And I remember counting those, being like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. What the fuck is this? Like, I barely wrapped my mind and my hand around a 6-string piece of shit Silvertone acoustic that I had back then, just absorbing everything I could. And so I'm really curious as to how I didn't see a 7-string in person until I was like 20 years old.
Yeah, this is right up your alley. It's beautiful. It's so it's so simian and inarticulate. It's like, yeah, me and Monkey, we just found the guitar and we just like strapped it on and tuned it real low. It's like 30 minutes of that. It's really good.
Well, I tell you what, I'll see you that, and I'll raise you this. Austin turned me on. This is years later. Austin Tackett turned me on to Fieldy from Korn. Did a bass like tutorial video.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But or no, it wasn't a tutorial. It was like a review of his new bass.
Oh,
and it was this white Ibanez 5-string with a white neck and like bright green strings on it. You've got to watch that.
Have you seen his tutorial video though, where he plays all of his songs and he teaches you? Because he has a DVD that's tutorials too, and like there's different like sets, and there's like it's like a music video. There's like lighting, and he'll have like a velvet couch, and they've like parked a Cadillac, and he's like, well, this is this is like Got the Life, he said, hammer it on the first one. It's like an hour-long DVD of that. Yeah, it's pretty fucking great.
That's hilarious.
What are your thoughts on bands like that? Like, okay, so let's go back. I'll tell you what. Let me rephrase that. So you started playing guitar. You started taking it seriously like around 16 or so. What were some of the old bands you were in? Like, give me a quick like recap of kind of your band history. I'm curious about that.
Oh, I tried to start a lot of bands when I was 16, and it never, it never happened. And then the first actual band that I was in that was productive and played shows and recorded music was called Steeples, and it was my band now with a different drummer. It was me, James Hammondtree, Daniel Weaver, and Blake Foster was the guy that played drums. We were a band for a while, and then Blake moved to New York. Me and James and Daniel were in various bands together, for years. We eventually kind of like coalesced back into one band, which was Chud after a while. And then me and James moved to California.
Okay, let me stop you there.
Sex Snobs, yeah.
Before that, I remember reading in an interview or hearing somewhere that somebody in Sex Snobs was like, stop asking about Chud. Or something to that effect. Something about, okay, enough about Chud. And I always wondered, why? Was it you, or was it James, or was it Daniel? Or do you remember hearing that or saying that? Or
I don't know if I ever said that. I don't know specifically. I think it was kind of annoying. I think people were like, I think people were expressing their interest in being nice, our friends and stuff like that when we first moved back. But we got a lot of like, oh, is Chud going to get back together now? And we were like, no.
Right.
You know what I mean? It was just kind of that. I mean, that's all there. I mean, that's
the extent of it.
Yeah, that's
like
the extent
that
of
book,
it.
That's closed. On to the next thing.
Yeah.
So you started Sex Snobs in California?
Well, when we were moving there, we're like, well, we're going to move there and we're going to be in a band. So what we did was we wrote a demo right before we moved. We recorded the demo with our friend Brent Hodge. He played drums, so we would have a demo out there so we could, get there and then find a drummer. And then we recorded the first record we did at a studio called the Atomic Garden with this guy Jack Shirley in Palo Alto, California. And then when we came back, we recorded this little tape with Daniel before he was in the band. Then we did at Dust House with Atlee Hickerson. We did the last album before, or we did Pop Songs and Other Ways to Die, and then the last album we did in Chicago at Electrical Audio.
Well, I listened to Pop Songs today on Bandcamp, which it's sexsnobs.bandcamp.com, I believe. That's the website. I think I have it here in my notes. And man, I hadn't listened to it before. Adam gave me a tape of that, and I went to go put it in my tape player like a month ago, and my tape player doesn't work. But then I saw that you had it on Bandcamp, and it's very different from like the early Sex Snobs stuff. I mean, well, I don't know how different it is. It just struck me as quite different. It seems like you've evolved a little bit.
Yeah, it was very different.
So what is the difference, and how, like, tell me how you came to where you're at now, and even with the newer stuff with Albini and whatnot, like how does a band, I mean, I've been in bands, I know it's kind of a dickhead question, but like, how did you get to where you are now from where you started? Like, is it just growing up? What is it?
Well, I mean, a lot happened. It's not really like our musical interests changed drastically in that time or anything like that. It's just, when we were in California, when we moved to California, it was a new band, and we were trying to get the ball rolling in a lot of different ways. And in the time that we had from, I guess, the first record to Pop Songs and Other Ways to Die, we had lived in California toward the West Coast, been to all these places we'd never been before, moved back home, restarted with a new drummer, and then decided we want another guitarist, add a guitarist. I mean, there was just a lot that, really kind of culminated, to having a different sound, I guess. Yeah, I don't know what else to say about it really than that.
Well, and then, you went and recorded with Albini, and I was just curious as to what that's like. And I'm sorry for the generic questions, but I really have wanted to talk about that because, I mean, that's, to me, Albini is somebody that we've all like either looked up to or been like, whoa. Like when I heard about that, I think I heard about it through James, or maybe James told Adam and Adam told me. I was like, man, that's pretty fucking cool. Like, that's what all of us dirtbags here in the Midwest have dreamed of, is going and recording at Electrical and like being in that environment. And so what was that like?
Oh, I mean, it was phenomenal. I mean, he's absolutely perfect if you've been in DIY bands and like recorded live and that sort of thing. You have your shit together and you can just, you've played the songs a million times and you don't, waste people's time and fuck them up. Oh, how'd this go? I mean, like, if you're not like that, it's perfect. He really is like fantastic to work with, and all you have to do to work with him is just call him on the phone. I mean, we send him an email. Hey, we were wondering, this is what we want to do. This is how much material we have. This is how many days we want to record it. Could you send us some quotes and tape costs, that sort of thing? Send him an email, and then 20 minutes after we sent an email, he called James on the phone. He's super just on top of his shit and efficient. Like, hey, this is Steve Albini, blah, blah, blah,
And so James answered. I'm sure he was quite excited, to get that phone call that quick.
Yeah, and it's just, it feels really good to work with people that are very productive and have the prerogative to get something done as much as the people in the band. Most of the time in music, you deal with so much hot air and you deal with so many letdowns and, bugging a person and bugging a person and bugging a person until something actually happens. It's extremely refreshing to have a person say, to sit down in an incredible studio and have a person give you, a legal pad. He's like, okay, this is what we're going to write down, everything that needs to get done. And, I don't care if you want to or not, we're going to write it all down and we're going to cross it off as we go. And everything's going to get done. You're like, thank God. You know what I mean?
Well, that's got to feel good because, you've recorded in a studio, I've recorded in a studio, and like, it seems like I've usually dealt with the opposite, where you go in and you have these high expectations and you get to the end of the day and half the shit you wanted to do didn't get done, or you get to that point where it's like, okay, that was good enough.
Yeah.
And, you know, I've been in bands that are very prepared, and I've been in bands that were garbage, you know, and that, I mean, he seems like a no-nonsense kind of guy, obviously, but he also seems like the kind of guy that's not going to fuck around with, like, an auto-tune setting or, like, moving something over in Pro Tools or whatever, you know.
There's not even any of that.
Doesn't exist.
There. Yeah, I mean, there's just not. I mean, the only computer... There's a computer at Electrical Audio that they do billing and scheduling with that's not in the studio. I mean, it's in the studio, not in the studio proper, you know. It's not in studio A or B. It's in the building, obviously. But, and then there's Steve Albini will bring his laptop and, you know, play solitaire and check his emails. There's not a computer.
So they're truly all analog?
Yeah, there's no computer to do anything, to work. Yeah, it's...
Okay.
Yeah, it's 100% analog. There's nothing to, you know, and some, you know, he still cuts tape and glues it, and I mean.
Oh, see, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I figured he was sitting behind a computer.
No, and it's funny because he doesn't really. He's not like, you know, vehemently against that or anything. He's just like, well, this just, you know,
how he's been doing it
I've
forever.
always done. I'm not going to do it any different. But the biggest. The biggest thing about the way he records that's so just like phenomenal and that makes everything you do sound so representative of your band, but also so easy to sound good. You know, you're like, oh man, I'm just singing in this room. I've never sounded better in my life. Is that he just doesn't take shortcuts. And you could do the same thing with a computer. You could do the same thing, you know, on just a tape machine and a mixer. Mm-hmm. It's just, you know, he's sitting around, you know, spending a good portion of the day moving a mic away from a snare drum, moving a mic to a snare drum, making it sound good in the preliminary. And I think that that's just like if you're recording analog or if you're recording digital, something that just gets overlooked a lot at in a lot of recording experiences, that sort of thing. Like, you know, and I think that digital can kind of lend itself to that because people are like, well, you know, we're gonna treat it.
We'll fix it in post.
Yeah. Well, and when you treat something in post, it's not like I'm not trying to demonize that, but that opens up an avenue for not making this guitar sound good. Like when you before you hit record, like, well, this doesn't sound the way that you want it to sound on the record, so we should fix this before we record any of it. Yeah. You could do that with a computer, and many professional people do. But there are plenty of people that also, you know, don't do that.
Yeah.
Well, it just seems like an experience like that would be something like very memorable. Like, I'm sure you learn things being in the studio there, and things that you might take with you the next time you record.
Yeah.
Now, are you putting that up on Bandcamp? Because I noticed it was just pop songs right now.
Well, we're going to put that one out as an LP on a record label called High Dive Records from Kansas City. So that's not going to be up until, you know, it's out.
Is that still in the works? So, because I heard some like preliminary, like, you know, mixes, like I think James showed them to me, and I was like, man, this sounds fucking good. But again, it was like another step from pop songs, and maybe once that comes out, it's a little more easy to understand, like, all these different sounds of Sex Snobs from the, you know, the way you started to the way you ended. Not ended, but to the way you are now, you know. But I was just curious as to when that was coming out. Is it in the works right now?
Ooh, I would say, it's in the works right now, fall or winter, you know. I mean, God, the turnover on records anymore, just to get a record press is fucking horrible.
Oh, like the actual act of getting a record pressed takes fucking forever.
Yeah.
So, well, cool, man. Yeah, I think we need to wrap it up. But
okay.
I actually I texted James this morning, James Hammondtree, bass player for Sex Snobs. And I was like, you know, I don't know Alex really well. I was like, he's coming on the show tonight. I was like, you know what? Tell me a couple things about him, you know, just in case, you know, I don't know the guy that well. He said, well, he's into board games and he's into world history. So
Like,
was he fucking
you're
with
like-
me, or are you really
You're
into
like,
world
fuck
history?
that guy.
No,
Never
no,
mind.
no.
No, I'm kidding.
Are you risk
Oh, yeah.
for fucking
Yeah.
an hour and a half?
Yeah, I mean that makes me sound, saying I'm into world history makes me sound a lot, more scholarly than I really am. But I don't know. I love games a lot.
Well, we'll have to have you back and talk about that. I almost thought he was joking. Like, am I
No,
going to bring
no.
this up? And Alex will be like, no, man, fuck world history. Let's talk about Japanese porn.
Fuck that, man.
Well, yeah, again, it's sexsnobs.bandcamp.com. And yeah, man, just appreciate you coming on and talking with us.
Yeah.
It's been fun.
Been real.
All right.
This episode of Boys is brought to you by FatBison.com. Fat Bison Workshop is a tattooed guy in the middle of nowhere who makes custom hand-carved hardwood signs built to order. Mention the Boys podcast and get free shipping. FatBison.com. Custom hardwood signs. Bold, simple, naturally beautiful.